Carnival Street by Clarence. It was about 6 months ago that he had first heard the talk that had now become a chorus, an echoing, taunting chorus to be heard on every street corner, in every corner bar, and around every dining table. So Christopher Jackson was not surprised when he heard his mother with it. Chris, them say Mary sick. Saying this, she glanced at him to see if he knew, but she saw nothing. Them says AIDS she have. She pressed. Christopher's face remained unmoved, but his eyes were now concerned. I used to hear you honored many times in your room. Chris, you know what that mean? The comment had stung him. She saw his face crease with anger, and yet, as suddenly as it appeared, it subsided, for she, after all, was his mother, a woman with an uncommon gift of loving her fellow man, whom yet life had beaten up. Indeed, life had first adorned her with beauty and the womanly graces, clothing her with a gentle, undisturbed spirit, only to ravish her with terrible circumstances. Lily May, her daughter, had gone these 9 months. She had run away from home, leaving a simple note. Love your mommy. Love your Chris. And how it had devastated her. There was no greater pain, no greater shame for a woman than to have a child run away from home. It was a reproach to her womanhood, the surest sign of a mother's failure. Now Christopher came close to her and saw the same look he had seen on her face 5 years ago when his father had kicked her, the same look of fear and anger and irresolution mixed in equal parts. He remembered the day vividly. It had been her birthday, and he and Lily May had prepared breakfast for her. She had confronted their father with the rumor that he was along with Miss Patsy, who lived 5 houses down the block. And he had kicked her cruelly, and then gone to live with Miss Patsy the same day. After that, Miss Patsy came to be referred to in conversations between Christopher and Lily May as the woman. Christopher gently stroked his mother's arms, saying, Nothing like that, mommy. Nothing like that. As he walked away, though, he was building up a resolve in his mind. Mary would have to talk today. Just yesterday, he passed the woman's house, and he had heard her shouting to no one in particular. Yes, Mary have it, and it's not she alone. Yet, when he had confronted her, Mary had flatly refused to answer. As he walked down the pathway, he ground his teeth so hard that he thought he could hear them, as he used to hear Lily May in her sleep. Yes, he was telling himself, Mary damn well have to talk today. He had just passed the woman's house when he saw Mary stumbling her way up the pathway, looking as though her feet were ill-equipped to carry her body, and her brain was too strong for both. She would have fallen had he not held out his hands and grasped her. His face again creased, and his eyes blazed. Mary, tell me if it is true. No. Mary, no. When she tried to free her hands to walk away, the same cruelty with which his father had kicked his mother rose up in him. He almost didn't hear her say, I'm sorry, Christopher. I'm so sorry. But those were the words, and he knew what they meant. He planted both hands at her neck. He was a monster now. The callous hands were at work, shaking her with unbridled violence, and then they suddenly fell limp at his side. He staggered backwards, blasted by her words, and by his realization of the monster that evidently lived in him. His mother had seen the callous hands at Mary's neck, and had seen when they fell limp at his side, and had seen when he staggered backwards. Now he stumbled into the house, and she stumbled in after him. God, Christopher, it's true then! It's true then, Christopher! She started to cry, and he turned and went back out of the house. He had gone to do the HIV test, and now, a week later, was at the clinic to collect the result. He sat with the apprehension of a prisoner whose sentence was about to be read. A woman entered the room. He pretended not to notice her until she came and sat before him. "Mr. Jackson, your test came back negative." Suddenly, he was on his feet, jubilant, with the chair still between his legs. "By God's good grace," he shouted. "You can't be serious, lady." He was at Hope Gardens in the afternoon. An intermittent breeze floated down the hillside, massaging the leaves of the tree he sat under. Birds, distant and near, chirped in glorious symphony. Providence had smiled on him, Christopher Jackson, and from here on he would live a circumspect life. He had barely entertained the resolution when a well-proportioned young woman came strolling across the lawn, and he had already started to admire her, and would have divided her body up into discrete parts in his mind, to grade and assess them individually, had not his cell phone rung. "Hello? It's me, Mary. Chris. You need to come over to the AIDS hospice on Carnival Street today. Chris, you need to come." Discord clouded his mind as he made his way up to the house, seeming to hear the sort of music that a moviegoer knows means impending danger. Mary's voice, more than her words, had suggested it, and now even the willow trees that lined the little road that led up to the house, their spiny leaves being fingered by the flirting winds, were suggesting it too. As he was about to ascend the steps to the veranda, he saw a figure, half sitting, half lying in one of those reclining chairs, clad in the lime green dress he recognized as the one he had bought for her last birthday. And though his mind could hardly accept it, it was his sister, Lily May, her body and spirit being eaten away by a cruel disease. He came close and peered into her half-sleeping eyes, and would later remark that he had peered too into her soul, and had seen a 19-year-old girl being robbed of her life and wanting so much more of it. Lily May, unknown to them, had learned of her own HIV-positive status and had run away from home to hide her shame.